Hello everyone and welcome to Star Wars on High. Thank you for stopping by. We are back with our review of the anticipated finale to the Darth Bane Trilogy, Dynasty of Evil by Drew Karpyshyn. As always, there will be spoilers for those who have not read the book, so I highly recommend doing so before jumping into this review. So pause the video, read the book, come back and hit play. And again, if you have a Legends book you'd like us to review, leave a suggestion down in the comments. Dynasty of Evil picks up 10 years after the events of Rule of Two. A lot has changed for Bane and Zana. They have been in hiding in the Outer Rim, posing as wealthy siblings. Bane has gone through more changes than Zana has, however. The mix of his old age with his use of the dark side and the leftover damage from the obelisks have left him weak with a tremor in his left hand. Despite his weakened state, Zana had made no attempt to challenge him and take his place as the master. And this worries Bane, believing that it's possible that the Sith could die with him if Zana chose not to adhere to his teachings. Bane could go out and find a new apprentice, but his body would fail before he would be able to give all of his training and knowledge necessary to his new apprentice. Bane's only option is to use the teachings of Darth and Dedu to heal his body or find a replacement. Meanwhile, on the planet of Doan, a rebellious group of miners are acting out against the crown. Jedi Knight Med Tandar meets with these miners in order to talk them through their grievances, but also to confiscate some Sith artifacts that they had dug up. But a disturbance in the Force cuts his visit short as an Iktachi assassin kills the rebels in the meeting. Tandar manages to get the blaster away from the assassin, but it explodes in his hand, killing him instantly. As this happens, Princess Sarah of Doan wakes up from a nightmare calling back to her time at her father's side, when the man known as Bane threatened to kill her if her father Caleb did not give Bane the antidote to the poison he had. It appears that after Caleb sent his daughter away, she married into the royal family on Doan, and is dealing with the passing of her prince, Garen. On top of all the trauma she already carries, Sarah's personal bodyguard is Lucia, who used to be a member of the Gloomwalkers under Bane's command back when he was known as Dessel, but neither are aware that Bane used to be Dessel. Sarah is summoned by the king and is informed of the events with the Jedi and the assassin. The king fears that since he asked for a Jedi mediator to be involved, that it may look like he hired the assassin to kill the Jedi. Sarah offers to go to Coruscant in hopes of meeting with the Jedi Council and explaining the situation as an accident that they had no part of. But as she leaves the king's chambers, she learns that Lucia hired the assassin to kill the Jedi. Back on Ciutric 4, through his connections and being known as a collector, Bane is able to find a scroll that points to a possible location of Darth and Dedu and a temple built in his honor. Bane knows that he must move fast if he is to rectify his current situation, and sends Zana away to Doan to gather the Sith artifacts that led to the death of Jedi Knight Med Tandar. Zana begins to doubt Bane's orders and feels that the time has finally come. Once she returns from Doan, she will challenge her master for the title of Dark Lord of the Sith. On Coruscant, Sarah and Lucia meet with Jedi Master Oba of the Jedi Council of First Knowledge, and learn that a former pupil of his named Set Hearth may be involved with the Sith artifacts. Before leaving Coruscant, Oba shows Sarah and Lucia the memorial built to remember the Jedi that fell fighting Bane, and even included her father Caleb in the memorial. She realizes that this means her father's worst fear came true, and Bane returned. She hears the story of Bane's defeat on Ambria and realizes that the supposed Sith that was defeated was not Bane, and asks Lucia to send a message to her assassin. Meanwhile on Doan, the fallen pupil and Dark Jedi Set Hearth is hunting for the Sith artifacts, and is able to bribe a Rodian named Quano to find out where they are. But Quano attempts to double-cross Set, which results in the death of Quano's bodyguards. Set then follows Quano to the real meeting spot with the rebels. Set notices that the leader, Drado, is being influenced by the Sith artifacts and rushes in, killing everyone and taking the artifacts for himself. Zana lands on Doan and follows the trail to the same meeting spot too late and finds the mess left by Set. She finds the Rodian Quano and persuades him to give her the location to where she can find his underground contact at the spaceport. But the contact knows where Zana came from, and she kills both the contact and Quano to leave no trace of her as she leaves the planet. Bane makes his way to Undedu's temple after landing on Prakith, but decides to make an entrance for some reason and lands atop the temple, drawing the attention of the surrounding Undedu cultists. Bane cuts them all down, gets the holocron belonging to Undedu, and leaves the planet. At the same time, Lucia meets with her assassin, known as the Huntress, Huntress. Lucia gives the coordinates to Caleb's old camp on Ambria and heads back to Doan. The Huntress travels to the location and meets with Sarah. Sarah offers the Huntress 10 times the normal rate to capture and bring Bane to Sarah. Sarah provides her with Senflax, a drug that will help incapacitate Bane, and she leaves. By this point, Zana had made her way to Nal Hutta and had found the home of Set Hearth. Seeing the luxurious place he had and all of the Sith artifacts, Zana wondered if he could make for a proper apprentice. Set then engaged Zana without hesitation, but the fight did not last long, as Set started to show fatigue, and instead of ending the fight, Zana casted a spell on him, sending his mind into madness, thinking that if Set had the willpower to break out of her spell, then he could be a worthy apprentice. Hearth eventually woke up, finding Zana still there. Zana then offered Set the opportunity to become her apprentice, but he is reluctant as it didn't work out for him the first time being the apprentice of a Jedi before. But his lust for power made him agree to her tutelage. Zana knows this is a risky choice, but unlike Bane, she's young enough to start over with a new apprentice if need be. While heading back to Ciutric 4, Bane discovers the ritual for the essence transfer, which would allow Bane to transfer his Force essence into the body of another, ultimately possessing the body and making it his own. However, it is a tricky ritual. If the individual is too strong-willed, they could potentially fight off the essence, leaving Bane as a bodiless consciousness for the rest of eternity. Getting the information was not easy though, as Bane had to send his mind into the holocron and forcibly retrieve the ritual from within. And as he returned to his home on Ciutric 4, he was unaware of the Huntress hiding within. Unaware of what was to come, Bane sprung the trap and was met with resistance of all kinds, from sonic detonators to web guns to a stun rifle. But Bane manages to hold off his attackers, killing most of them as he begins to fight the Huntress, who was only able to get one cut across Bane's arm, but it was enough for the Senflax to enter his bloodstream and take him down. The Huntress then leaves with Bane and the dead mercenaries with Bane's lightsaber and his personal holocron in hand and heads back to Doan. Zana arrives shortly after to find the mess left from Bane's attack, realizing that he had been captured, and sends Set out to find any information he can on what had happened. Set returns, telling her everything about Doan, and even about his knowledge of Darth and Dedu and the knowledge and skills he possessed. Realizing that Bane plans to break his own rule and become immortal, she leaves for Doan with Set, knowing that whoever took Bane had Endedu's holocron too. The Huntress brings Bane's body into Doan, and Sarah has him locked up in the stone prison, a dungeon built underneath the foundation of the Doan castle. Sarah, along with Lucia and the Huntress, go down to Bane's cell. Lucia is shocked when she discovers who Bane really is, after knowing him as Dessel, but Sarah just knows him as the monster that murdered her father. After leaving Bane's cell, the guards are notified to sound the alarm should anything happen, and as Lucia leaves to find Sarah, Zana and Set arrive. Zana heads off into the stone prison to locate Bane and orders Set to guard their ship, but the thought of immortal life is too tempting, and Set runs off in search of Endedu's holocron. Bane regains his strength and breaks out from his cell, but the alarms are triggered. Bane then makes his escape, but sensing Zana's presence, needs to be careful as the Senflax is still in his system and he does not have his lightsaber. But right before the alarm is triggered, the Huntress informs Sarah that Lucia let Bane escape. Sarah doesn't believe it until she hears the alarm echoing throughout the castle. Sarah proceeds to the prison control center, planning to activate a failsafe that will cause the entire prison to detonate and collapse in on itself. Zana eventually catches up to Bane, killing Lucia with a burst of Force energy. Zana feels betrayed as Bane has broken the rule of two, but Bane argues that he only did it because she never challenged him, and that he must be defeated in his prime, not while old age takes him. Zana challenges Bane regardless, and notices that despite his age and not having his lightsaber, Zana is still unable to defeat Bane. At the same time, Set is met by the Huntress in the hangar and proceeds to fight him while messing with his connection to the Force. They both, however, agree to withdraw, and they leave in separate pods. Bane rushes in after being separated from Zana. The Huntress kneels before Bane, holding out his lightsaber and holocron, and asks to become his new apprentice. Promising the location of Sarah, Bane accepts and they leave. Bane wants to keep Sarah alive as she possesses the same skills her father had, and as a result she could be very useful to the Sith. But she refuses, and with Bane's permission, the Huntress kills Sarah. Bane then initiates the Huntress as his new Sith apprentice, taking the name Cognis. As Zana lands to challenge Bane, Cognis chooses to stick to the loyalty of the Sith by not interfering with the battle between Bane and Zana. And the fight is absolutely epic, with Zana using her magic to create visions in Bane's mind and using the dark side to bind his limbs with what appears to be shadow tentacles. Bane is able to fight them off, however, and goes after Zana, disarming her in the fight, point, but as he's about to bring his lightsaber down upon her, another tentacle grabs his arm, severing it, bringing Bane to his knees. But before Zana can finish him off, Bane grabs her wrist and begins the essence transfer, completely destroying his body and his essence, transferring into Zana's body. Zana falls to the ground and Cognis waits as the essences of both Zana and Bane battle it out for the possession of Zana's body. Zana eventually rises from the ground, claiming that Bane is gone, and that she is now Darth Zana, Dark Lord of the Sith. She takes Cognis as her apprentice when Cognis notices Zana flexing her left hand, leaving her to wonder if it really was Zana. Meanwhile, aboard the Doan shuttle, Set Hearth begins to look into the holocron, wanting to learn the power of essence transfer, ending the Darth Bane trilogy. These 3 books were quite the roller coaster, and making these reviews was definitely a challenge, but I'm glad to finally have it finished. Dynasty of Evil is a cool ending to the Darth Bane trilogy, but I feel it's also a weak link in the story. Ultimately, I feel that Path of Destruction is the best book in the series, but both Rule of Two and Dynasty of Evil have some great moments, but are otherwise not great books. I feel that the plot revolving around Caleb's daughter now being a princess was very odd, and Caleb in general just felt like a one-off character that should have stayed in book 1. I do think that the best part about Dynasty of Evil is that it shows that Bane never really was as great a Sith as the legends claim. I do think the best part about Dynasty of Evil is that it shows that Bane never really was as great of a Sith as the legend claims. Yes, he created the Rule of Two, which is arguably one of the greatest things to happen to the Sith, but he, just like Palpatine, falls for the idea of becoming immortal. And yes, the argument could be made that he only wanted to do that to ensure that he could find a worthy apprentice, but I feel that Bane would have kept doing it over and over and would have unknowingly started the Rule of One that Darth Krayt attempted to make nearly 1200 years later. The final fight in the book is where I wanted to go from the very beginning. Bane is known as this all-powerful Sith who completely eradicated the rest of the dark side, but no matter how powerful he would become, his fall would be just as graceless as those who came before him and those who would follow. I wanted to see the all-powerful Bane lose. I wanted to know how it was going to happen and if he was as all-powerful as he claimed. And he did put up one hell of a fight, especially when he involved the essence transfer that left a lot of people wondering. Does Zana flexing her hand point to the possibility that Bane's essence transfer worked? It's a great hint at that, but ultimately no. The author, Drew Karpyshyn, even came out and stated that Zana won the fight. The flexing of her hand was meant to show the toll the fight took on her body, almost like an echo of Bane that would always remain with her. The one thing I never understood is how Bane felt that Zana needed to challenge him when he was at his prime. No Sith Lord was ever defeated in their prime. That was always at the very last minute when it was least expected. We can look at every Sith as they have been defeated in the past, and it was never that way. So why all of a sudden make this rule that your apprentice must fight you when you're at your strongest? Is it to ensure that the attributes of being a strong Sith would continue on throughout the pipeline? Because it still seemed to do that regardless. Zana's new apprentice, though, is very fascinating. This is about the time where the Sith started taking very strategic names. Darth Cognis took the name because of her cognitive abilities to see the future, which I found to be very clever. As for Set Hearth, I don't know what his deal is, or what would have ever happened to him after the events of this book. We know that Darth Cognis would eventually have her own apprentice, Darth Millennial, but their story is never really fleshed out or completed. Overall, though, the trilogy is worth reading, regardless of if I enjoyed all 3 books or not. The stories and lore are fascinating, and is the reason that this series is the favorite for a lot of fans. But what were your thoughts on Dynasty of Evil and the Darth Bane trilogy as a whole? And let us know down in the comments, do you think Zana won, or did Bane's essence transfer successfully work? I will say that our next review will be on the book Darth Plagueis by James Luceno, as it is a spiritual successor to the trilogy, keeping a lot of the same themes throughout. So if you enjoyed these reviews and want to see more, be sure to subscribe and stick around, and make sure to let us know down in the comments what Legends book you want us to review next. As always, thank you to everyone who stuck around to this point in the video, and we hope to see you again very soon.